Hello, Stephen.
Nathalie, how are you?
Good, good. Welcome to the Connection Experiment, which is our new brand for the podcast this year. And it's even more exciting to bring that theme into this conversation with you. I'm super happy to have this time with you to explore how coaching is going in schools. And so, thank you for joining me. I will start by just sharing a few things I know about you, and then you can, of course, add anything that I might miss. So, first, you're the deputy head teacher of secondary at Bangkok Prep. We met through the International School Partnership, so Bangkok Prep is part of that network. And you can expand on that if you want. You've also stated in some research I found online that you came to education through sports and coaching in sport. So I'm curious to understand how that has impacted your style in education as a teacher and a leader. And before Bangkok, you were in Beijing. I understand you've been in education for over, is it a decade? Working with elementary schools and education. And your philosophy centers around positive professional relationships, which you state as a foundation for strong teaching, learning, and school culture. So I am curious also to know how that has impacted your role in implementing this coaching prep model that you have in your current role, and coaching the prep way, what that means to you, and how it's impacted your school culture. You've stated that coaching is no longer a side project, but a culture shift. So I am really just super excited to get into this conversation with you. And I'll invite you to add anything I might have missed that you want to share before we get going.
Thank you, Nathalie. No, firstly, just quite honoured, really, and fulfilling a professional aspiration on being on a podcast. And yeah, more than happy to share our highs, lows, and vulnerabilities and success stories. Whoever might find it beneficial.
Amazing. So I guess I'll start with that question of how did coaching in athletics influence you as an educator, in elementary and with kids and in your role today?
I think, yeah, I was a bit of a failed athlete, really. I say I failed. I tried my best, in inverted commas, to make it as a professional cricketer. I left school after not doing too well in my A levels, and actually was lucky enough to obtain a cricket season in Sydney, Australia, and had the most wonderful time. Had the most eye-opening time in terms of I don't think I'm going to make it as a cricketer, and realised pretty quickly that I had to do something differently. And as part of my role with Randwick Petersham was to be a cricket development officer. So I'd go around to primary schools and secondary schools, and you'd be able to coach the different teams or coach little clinics. And I found really quickly that actually, yeah, that connection, I suppose those positive professional relationships that you can build can actually have a really big impact. I was like the club coach for, I think it's the Sydney Coastal Sharks at the time. This adorable little under-11s team, and I used to train them and we used to go to games and things. I remember at the end, receiving this beautiful gift from a guy who worked at it was very close to the heart. It's to do with wildlife and things, and they'd all signed the book. And I thought I'd made an impact there. I'd actually done something that's impacted the young people's lives, whether it was with their cricket or just whether it was with those positive professional relationships. So then came back to the UK, trialed at different counties and didn't get very far. And then I realised that I need to undertake my teaching degree and become a PE teacher. And then it's taken me overseas. I was only applying in Liverpool in the northwest or the northwest of England area. And I only had one interview, and there was hardly any jobs come out. So I was like, I need to cast a wider net here. And a job came up in Bangkok.
Okay.
And they were looking for a newly qualified PE teacher. And they had a sister school in the UK. So I drove down to Worcestershire where the school was, interviewed, managed to get the job, and 15 years later, I'm still international and spent. So this will be my 8th year in Bangkok overall, but there was a 7-year in between gap at Dulwich College, Beijing, which was a remarkable experience. That's when I first came
Wow.
across coaching, was in Beijing, as in the pure coaching that we're talking about today.
Yeah. Wow. So how I always say that, traveling is how we become aware of our own biases and really learn about life, culture, and, diversity. What did you learn about yourself making that move to work internationally?
I think I definitely learned that, living away from home was maybe something for me. And whether that was because I had this sense of freedom or sense of a different person that I could, kind of create myself again. I definitely explored that, which was really enlightening. In terms of the different biases, I think I've always been quite like in my own little bubble. I think, and I think I'm sure we'll get out onto this a little bit later on. But that's where coaching really has developed this sense of self and realizing my flaws a little bit more. But I think I don't know whether I did really realize it back then. I was still young and I just kind of went for anything, like if it was a good idea or if it could mean something positive was going to come out of it. And then I think I just used to go for it. I'm quite a fast paced, energetic and intense human being. I mean, it because Sydney's such a diverse city, it definitely opened my eyes to working with and interacting with a different diversity of people and cultures and things like that. So that was really enlightening. But yeah, I think I was still a bit tunnel vision at that time on, trying to be a cricketer and then realizing I can't be a cricketer, I need to be a teacher. It's probably only really until Beijing where I really started to become a little bit more self-aware really, and I suppose how coaching has also helped change my leadership style without it being about me, that it's actually nothing to do with me. It's about other people and the growth in other people. And I think that's why coaching is so powerful, and it means a lot to me that I'm coach like, because it means that I'm giving all of my attention to other people. The conversation isn't about me, it's about them. So I think that's
Hmm.
again another reason how coaching's been so pivotal and yeah, powerful to me.
So what is the difference? What is the difference that coaching makes in an environment like a school?
A great question was asked of me is, if coaching is the answer, what is the question? And it was by a
Oh, I
company
love that.
yeah, it's amazing, right? And it was a company that was trying to sell coaching. And I took a pause, and just as I was taking a pause, I'm like, that's it. It's the pause bit. It's the ability to just stop and think deeper and think more carefully and more compassionately about the things that we're doing. And I think that's why there's such a tug of war in schools, because everyone's trying to do things so quickly, and yet we're saying we need to be more coach-like. And I suppose one misconception is that it slows things down. And I think it definitely slows thinking down, but it slows thinking down for a really positive reason. Um, to really think deeply on things. And if we thought a bit deeper on this item here, or this project, or this issue, or this incident, I wonder how deep we could get, or close to the root cause of it, maybe. And I think often in education, it's like we just need to do things really, really quick at surface level, and then next minute we find out a few days later that the reason the decision we made might have been the wrong one, and we've now have to backtrack, so we have to do it all over again. And then you're in this vicious loop or cycle of just going around and around.
Yeah, I love that question that you started with, if coaching, I think it was if coaching is the answer, what is the question? Was that what
Yeah.
you said? Yeah. For me, the question is, what is connection? Because to me, coaching is the language of connection. It's also through coaching that I learned connection is a skill. It's not just something that we can assume. It has to be taught. And I feel like I was not taught connection as a child. I don't see my children being taught connection in all their schooling. And I feel like there's something missing in schools around teaching that skill. And coaching is that skill to me. And I wonder about what's the role of connection in education, and how do you see coaching linked to that, if you do at all?
I mean, the first thing that came up to me, it's almost like it's the sole purpose of education is connection with different people, connection from teacher to student to teacher to parent. But it's more, it goes way deeper than that, doesn't it? It's the student's connection to learning. How can they really engage in something? And surely collaboration or talking about it is one of the most impactful things on one's learning, isn't it? If they can really get engrossed in the learning and talk about it and expand it, and then you challenge each other through really deep questioning, I think that is arguably one of the main purposes of education, really, is to form deeper, greater connections. So yeah, I mean, it really does resonate and sing very loudly to me. And also, you alluded to earlier, you might have seen on a couple of my bios in different places, it is that positive professional relationships, and you cannot build those without a strong sense of connection. And what was coming up for me before, I suppose, when I was talking about me being a bit one-dimensional, is that I suppose I never really listened to understand, because I just had things in my own head that I was, either flying forward with, or whereas coaching is just, it really is that, isn't it? You're listening to understand. And once you can do that and you sit and you offer the person space, providing connection, you can really get on a much deeper level. Or you can challenge each other even more, which is great.
Yeah, well, and I think what coaching offers is a space that opens up. Instead of just talking at each other, we're actually creating a space where people feel like there is a connection to each other, and not just the topic and the outcome and the deliverable and the thing that we all need to accomplish, because we all know there's performance, there's expectations. And I think that is the most resistance to coaching, is what you're talking about, that need to perform, that need to progress, to make, to hit those objectives. And it's that smarter, faster, better culture that we're rubbing up against when we bring in a coaching culture. It, like you said, it creates time to slow down and to think. And through that, I believe that when we create that space, we empower others to take on responsibilities, to take initiative, and we disperse the I guess the ownership of results. We bring others into empowerment, and that way is about sharing responsibilities and seeing what others can do, including children in classrooms. And I guess what I'm wondering is, what has been the shift that you've noticed with a coaching culture?
I mean, I think just that, really, empowerment sings very loudly. I think one thing I did notice when I first got to the new school, new school, been there 4 years, that there was a lot of managing going on. It was very tasks. You talk about an action plan, you talk about an agenda on a meeting. And if you're going to shift a culture, that exactly what you mentioned before is about that empowerment or agency or autonomy. If you can spin it to more growing people, or the whole focus of the conversation is about growth, then you are, I suppose, taking a little bit of a risk, but you truly are giving the agency and the ownership back to the people to come up with the solutions for themselves, rather than this compliance culture of, hey, I'm stuck on this, what should I do? Do this, right? Okay. And then we all go and do it, and then we follow, rather than a culture where people just stop and think. And I think those coaching questions allow for that so powerfully. But yeah, agency, autonomy, empowerment, all these wonderful words. I think that's what we've noticed the shift in, for sure. We've definitely seen a difference in how meetings are conducted. What probably would be, I think if you walked around school and you went into meetings, you would hear a lot more coach-like conversations going on. Rather than this one person doing the meeting with an agenda, I'm going to tell you what to do, you all go away and do it. Well, yeah, you'd notice that in more of our professional development workshops, you'd see coaching intertwined in various different things. So there would be an opportunity to discuss a topic, and in that topic there would be a coaching framework, whether you use our prep model or whether we just use, offer space, listen, ask one big powerful question, that kind of thing. But I'd hope I suppose the dream would be that if you were walking in the corridor, instead of hearing, maybe a polite jibe at maybe myself or management, you would hear, or a coach-like question: what's most important to you right now, or what do we need to happen next, or so it would be really changing the dialogue between. I suppose it goes back to the professional culture of the organization, that we're committed to growing each other and committed to bettering one another, I think.
Yeah, well, and I've had the incredible opportunity to work with your school and many others in the ISP network, and I have been able to see this passion of mine, in schools, bringing coaching into schools, come to life. And I've heard much of the feedback from your peers on what's changed for them. And so when you talk about walking in those corridors and what would you hear and what would be different, it's really exciting to think about what the difference has made, even just on an individual level, that then has this ripple effect in the schools, the way that people are thinking. Like, I've heard many times that the participants in these programs will say, I've never really thought about the difference an open-ended question will make in a conversation compared to the closed-ended question. And or just taking that time to ask the question and let it land, and not thinking about my answer or the next question I'm going to ask, and really waiting to receive the answer. This way of being prioritizes human connection over curriculum, over outcomes, performance. And so what is the resistance? Like, what is it that we need to overcome to bring this into more schools and to make coaching a part of education?
I definitely think it doesn't need to sound like a radical change. When people think of coaching, they think of two people sitting in a room for an hour, and it's which is a remarkable thing, is to be in that space, and I'm a huge advocate and believer of it. And I think what's cropping up for me is just tiny habits, just only asking what questions, or just giving a little bit of silence before you respond as the coach, or before you respond as the leader, or whatever it is. I think, the smaller habits will go a long, long way. And I think, don't think of it as a huge overhaul of what you're doing. Like, in the classroom, there will be coach-like questions going on from teacher to student. In fact, great teachers they ask some remarkably great coaching questions. So I think if somebody sees it as this massive overhaul, I think that definitely is a friction point. I think going back to the speed thing, I've heard it in my current school, is that we can't just go around coaching each other. I kind of disagree. I think you can, in a normal conversation, if you think of that coach continuum, training, mentoring, and coaching, you could definitely slip between all three. But if you remain in that coach zone for as long as possible, I think that's all we're asking for, right? We're not asking everyone to be this expert, Nathalie type coach. That's not what we haven't got. We haven't got the credentials to do that. So it's just being more coach-like. I talked about the students before, but we're doing it with the students as well, and teaching them how to ask open-ended questions and provide the extra space and use silence. So I think if I was to boil it down, it definitely don't see it as an overhaul, that you just treat it with tiny habits and just allow for those open-ended questions, providing a bit more space and really listening deeply to understand. I think it would be the biggest friction point. And then we have talked about the speed thing. I do think that's a big tug of war, to be honest. I think a lot of people who are action focused and we need to get things done see it as whether they see it as an extra thing, but they see it as something that's going to take longer. And I think that's the problem. I think that's the problem right there, that, yeah, it might take a little bit longer, but you might get a better outcome if you do really spend time listening deeply and spend time listening to understand, and let's really get to the root cause of whatever we're trying to find out.
Yeah, and you're reminding me of the work that I've done with NGOs and bringing coaching into the conversation with the recipient of the NGO, like whatever the cause might be. One of the blocks or one of the hurdles to overcome is understanding the real need that you're trying to serve. And through coaching questions, we're able to get to the heart of an issue for a community, or a population in need, or whatever that that endeavor is. Those questions actually save time. They cut out a lot of the try one thing, oh, that didn't work, try that thing, oh, that failed, move this way, oh, we have made an assumption but we were wrong. Like, all those assumptions take time. All those assumptions take resetting and trying again. And yet when we bring in the coaching questions from the beginning and we ask, what's most important? What do you need from us right now? What will change your life and change the outcomes for you? Then we get the real answers of how is this going to support? How is this initiative going to support the people that it's meant to support? And in schools, I think we say it slows things down, but I actually believe that in the long run, it saves time, because we're not leading with assumptions, we're leading with curiosity, and that curiosity solves more problems than the assumptions create. And so there's that opportunity. And I know that you're doing work now in your school and across ISP to measure the results of coaching, to see like what are the impacts, measurable ROI. What do you expect to see if you think about that longitudinal lens of like over time? I think you guys have been engaged in this coaching culture for at least 2 years or maybe 18 months. What do you expect to see as the difference?
Yeah, it's coming up to near enough the 18 month mark, so it's definitely time to pull out the old impact survey for sure. We originally delved into one's confidence and competence in the practice of coaching, but then we also asked questions about how much agency and ownership do they feel in their own professional development, and how much agency and autonomy do they feel in making decisions. So that those questions will definitely come out again. But I've been thinking about this a lot in terms of measuring the impact. I think because there's loads of things you could draw in, right? There's you could bring in well-being data, you could bring in academic results data, and I think all of these things are really, really important. And I'm a huge believer in triangulation of data, because I think that's the only way you can, or even more than triangulation, to get a really correct, let's say, or the most accurate representation of what's really going on. So the results from all of those things will definitely tell us. I think it's, what did we set out to achieve? Well, we set out to achieve with a coach-like cultures to provide people more space with their own professional development, or their own professional learning, or their own professional practice. And if you look at like the list of things that we've done in terms of the workshops, or providing an in-house leadership, an in-house coaching program, attaching coaches to project leaders, attaching coaches to development initiative leaders, like we definitely are providing those opportunities. I suppose the big question on, the people who are providing the money for these things is what impact it's having. And it's really difficult to pinpoint exactly what those coaching conversations are having the impact with, but I suppose it's just all of the above. There's the second round of those survey responses. They will definitely play a part. Last year we had the best ever academic results we've ever had. Do we say that's because of coaching?
Nice.
Like, I mean, you if you were being really Yeah, but the well-being one is the one I think I'm most interested in. Knowing that the school's growing, knowing that there's a bit of I suppose ambiguity with the ownership and things, and staff feeling a little bit uneasy. But if you look at our retention rates, there's only one teacher in primary school that are leaving. There's five in secondary. For an international school of our size, it's always been that great before coaching, but it really is. The last 3 years have been, good retention rates.
Yeah. Well, if I go back to the studies, which is what led me to becoming so passionate about coaching in schools, is the correlation between well-being and coaching, being coached, but also learning the coaching skills, being, aware of the impact of the what question versus the why question, that bringing, that self-regulation, that self-awareness, and even social awareness that comes when you learn the coaching skills. That's what I was most interested in, and a correlation between that and well-being of the teacher, that then is affecting the well-being of the classroom and the kids. And we all know that kids who feel safe and secure and happy learn better, they take in more information. So there's that, that pervasive effect of coaching in the school culture. And I wonder, from your perspective, what do you think is possible when every teacher takes a coach approach or is a coach? Like, what do you think would be the opportunity there?
I mean, I'm sold on it. I'm absolutely sold on it. And I think, yes, it would 100% improve one's well-being. I think, I'm making assumptions here, but I definitely think it has improved one's well-being, especially those that have been on the course. I'm sure that the feedback that was provided to ISP and to yourselves at Coach Academy was extremely positive. I mean, looking through my own lens, it's 100% improved my well-being. Even myself and my wife, we have coach-like conversations, and I think just a tiny anecdote that when we went to before, and you hit the nail on the head, as I was having a bit of a wobble in last academic year, a couple of things back home, family things, and I went to see my head of secondary, who's a remarkable human being, and I was kind of confiding in, and she just paused for a minute. And she said, "What do you need right now?" And just the warmth of that, and that open-endedness, it was just, honestly, it was. And I think those type of questions will be asked by the people that have been trained by yourselves with our staff members that are in the in-house leadership program, and if it feels the same for them like it did for me, then there's connection, right? There is a sense of connection. There is a sense of trust. There is a sense of openness that people can feel like they feel belonging, or they feel included in this amazing community that we have. So yeah, I think the
Yeah,
possibilities are endless, Natalie. I think they really are endless.
yeah. And I just saw like your energy around that one question that you received.
Mm.
What do you
It was really
need?
powerful.
And
I
that
can feel it now. I
moment,
can feel it. I can
yeah, I
hear
can
it
see
saying it. I
that.
can
Yeah.
feel it. Yeah.
And if we see the impact on you, an adult, an educator, a leader in education, imagine the impact on a child when we pause and ask a child, what do you need? Or we recognize something in them that is unique to them, and it's not just part of a system and, a performance like measure that we're trying to get to. When we think about kids, and I know a lot of teachers, I know a lot of educators are, so good with the kids. And I personally, I think you're all superheroes, because I don't think I could do it. Teaching in classrooms and working in schools, it's a tough place to be. And it takes a really special human to work in those areas. And the most important job, I believe, that we have in our society is teaching and educating our kids for the next generation. So I just feel like that is the learning ground for kids to start to learn from the models around them, right? Like you are modeling as an educator, as a leader, teachers in the classroom, at the head of the classroom, they are modeling what it means to self-care, what it means to be curious, to listen well, to take the time to pause. So what are you seeing, if any, in terms of the, like you mentioned, the best academic year so far? What do you see as the correlation, if there is one, between this coach approach and the results, like the higher retention and all of these things that you're noticing?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be naive to say that the reason we got our best ever academic results were as a result of just the coach training, for sure. But I think, and there was a new behaviour policy that was brought in, and the whole concept of the level one there was about curious conversations. So I mean, there is synergy there for sure. But I think we also have a program with our student leaders where they have teacher captains, and we're training our teacher captains to be more coach like. Myself and my colleague, we coach the kind of head students, but we do it as a pure coaching opportunity. So they get 20 minutes a week where they come in, and then there's something, whether it's a bit of positivity or whether it's a bit of something that they're finding a challenge with. So, but I think even just the daily interactions with our young people, in the classroom, those open-ended coach-like conversations are so powerful. And I'm pretty sure that, the staff that haven't been on the coach training, but they've seen it, whether we've been modeling it in the morning briefings or whether they've been on some of our in-house leadership programs, they will have been taking some of those coach-like approaches into the classroom, or probably even better still, they're just being mindful to be more open-ended in their questioning, which I think is so powerful.
And what about the relationships between, the leadership in the school, your colleagues and your peers? What has it done to communication, or to, what are you witnessing as the impact to that at that level?
I mean, I definitely try and be as coach-like in the big leadership meetings, if you like. We've changed if we're just looking at secondary school, we've changed our meeting dynamics. So we'll have a very operational morning briefing every week, but then we'll have things such as a collab, or we'll have a capacity and development. And the whole way in which we talk to each other, or we communicate, or we connect with each other in those workshops or collabs is coach-like, and there's a real intention about that. So whether we use our prep model or whether we say that we're going to coach each other through this, we've done like leadership masterminds, which are very coach-like. So I think if you delved into the secondary leadership teams meeting, workshop slides, you'd see coaching or coach-like approaches in near enough every single one of them. So that's been really heartwarming. In terms of higher up, so we're in the academic leadership team, we've definitely tried to be more intentional in the way in which we're being coach-like with each other, and we definitely were way more intentional last academic year than we are this year in the specific meeting I'm talking about, and that's up for review, I'm sure. Our head of school, I would like to say a huge thank you to our head of school and ISP for putting us through the coach training, because it's been a huge amount of funding, and but yeah, I couldn't be more confident about the impact it's going to have. But yeah, in the big meetings, we're definitely being more coach-like with each other. There's still a bit of way to go, I think.
Yeah. Oh, there's always a way to go. But it's nice to hear that you're, just the efforts to implement, although it's subjective, it is, it's difficult, it's qualitative, it's not necessarily quantitative, differences that are happening. And that is the struggle with coaching and measuring impact. It's hard to make a direct line connection to what we're witnessing as the change and the outcome. But I do know that a lot of people through the ISP program and through other programs that we run have said, and it sounds cliche, but the first life to change is your own, and that the first, you are the one impacted first, because you start to change the way that you think, you start to change the way that you talk, you start to notice different things, notice the power of metaphor, or notice the power of a question. all that is a personal change before it's, projected outward. And so I wonder about like yourself in that, like when I say connection is a skill and rather than an assumption, which I think is what we often do in the world, we assume connection versus realizing that it's actually a skillful endeavor. It's something that we must be skilled at and learn to do well. What do you think about that?
I wholeheartedly agree for sure. I think, yeah, I mean, just I suppose the three powerhouses of being coach like is listening to understand, providing space, and then asking open ended questions. There's a whole heap of connection right there with the three of them. But I think it's not necessarily. Is it teaching people to connect, or is it providing the opportunity to see how powerful the connection is when that type of conversation arises? Like just some of the questions you've asked me, it's just you have to sit and think and then that's connection, isn't it? Rather than this hit straight back. So I don't know, but yeah, of course there is an element of teaching the connection, but I think once people see, we've done a lot of modeling with coach guide conversations. We did one with the students the other day, and I actually used the amazing staying and wondering task that you taught us,
Yeah,
and it was
yeah.
with a group of year 10s and year 11s. So it was 260 students watching me and my colleague do this staying and wondering task, because then they were going to go and do it. And I actually used the life-changing thing of me having a baby as the stimulus, because I wanted to make it more, I suppose more, because if it was just like a leadership challenge, they might have just been switched off. And you could hear the gasps after the what questions and the pauses. It was really, really powerful. And then for them to see them engage in the same task and to see a student like kind of look up or look to the side, I suppose that what do they call it? The dog face, a bit more of a curious one. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it was super, super powerful. I don't know whether you can almost teach it, but the students can definitely see when there's a deep connection between two adults and they're in a coach like conversation, or they can see it when two of their peers are in a deep a deep conversation and it's coach like.
Yeah, and I think what you're expressing there is the experience of it rather than the teaching of it. And that
Mm.
opportunity, like that exercise of moving from knowing to wondering is really a powerful experience. People never get it if you're just talking about it, that it's harder to understand. But when you can experience it like that, you start to see those shifts that you talked about, right? People really, engaging and connecting on like the experience of wondering and all the answers that come from wondering just without having to provide answers. Just the wondering itself provides so much answer to, or so many answers. So if you were to redesign a school where connection was a priority, what would be one or two things that you would change or make sure were present in a school? This is like the miracle question. Anything goes. If you had a blank canvas and you could, Stephen, you're called in to design a new school framework, what would you prioritize?
Yeah, it's funny you should ask that. I definitely thought you might ask something along those lines, and it in kind of the thinking preparation for having our call today, it was really difficult. But I'm a huge one for defining a culture. If we're gonna have a culture, we should define it, and we should be really intentional about the way we do things around here. And I think a coach like culture or a coaching culture would have to be central to every way that we communicate and every way that we connect with each other. Um, rather a bit cringy, but in that, the final assignment, it was moving from curing to curiosity. And I think there's a lot to be said in that. But yeah, ideally everybody would have a coach, right? Like, it doesn't matter how old they were, they would have somebody that they could have a coach like conversation with, or it could be coaching triads or whatever you want to call it. But Yeah, they would be, this time they would be taught in the art and the skill and the practice of coaching, from a very, very early age. And it's incredibly difficult to be an amazing coach. And I really do. I mean, I'm in awe of watching a really strong coaching conversation. But if you really strip it down, the connection skills that you talked about, they're not that difficult in terms of the complexity of them. You know, listen to understand, provide space and time for people to respond, and then, you know, ask a really powerful open-ended question like that. Everybody can do that in isolation. Now, of course, you need hours upon hours and accreditations and certifications to be an incredible coach, but the core skills are so, I don't really like the word soft skills, but they're incredibly important skills. And I think if we taught them and modeled them and really defined them at a very early age, that would be the perfect way in which people in a school community can connect with each other. If you're talking about curriculums and buildings and everything like that, then we might have to have another conversation about what a great school should look like. But I think with the culture, yeah, it would be from the very first opportunity that the young students could talk to each other. There would be the principles of coaching.
Yeah, I'm so happy you reminded me of from moving from curing to curiosity. What does that mean to you, curing to curiosity?
Well, I think maybe it stemmed from the development in me as a leader, but I've definitely seen it a lot when I'm in meetings with some leaders, and they're just desperate to give the answer or desperate to give their solution. And I'm going to attach their answer and their solution to this because I think, yeah, I think one can jump in and really make a quick decision without really hearing the room or listening to the room and finding out what the problem really is. And I think that's where I'm going with it, is that if we can stop trying to cure everything and just be curious about it. And also, I was kind of having to think about this in preparation is, you know, if we're all about improving people as a leader, which is arguably our core foundational principle, then in a school setting, if we trust professionals, what's the worst thing that could happen? You know, that they make hopefully a mistake isn't too drastic, right? And God forbid there is in some cases, and that's where professional standards and professional culture, etc., comes into it. But if you trust that professional, and then they do make an error, or there's some shortcomings, or they fall short, what a great opportunity to have a great conversation again. You know, what did you learn going through that? What did you learn about yourself as a leader? Or what would you do next? Or what's most important to do? You know, all of these great questions. So yeah, I kind of got lost in my chain of thought then. From curing to curiosity, I just think it gets rid of that compliance culture, and it really does sit with growth and empowerment. And also, you don't know everything as a leader, and I think once leaders realise that that they don't know everything, and actually they might learn a lot from somebody who's not a leader or hasn't got a higher position than them, or a young person who's in year 7, who's got a really unique take on things. That whole kind of statement, what you need to do is, the first time that the leader opens their mouth and they say what you need to do, is a bold way to move forward if it's going to be a connection and a partnership, because I think that's what it's about, right? Students, teachers and parents has to be a partnership. Obviously people get it wrong, and you're going to have to change from being a coach to a mentor, because then they're not quite getting it with the open-ended questions. But if we could stay in that coach growth zone a little bit longer, I think it will benefit everyone.
Yeah, and I think that's the key. When we think about leadership styles, all styles are required to be a good leader, mentor,
Sure.
Persuader, advisor, and coach. And I love what you're saying about staying in the coaching lane longer. That is my hope in leadership. It is always the first thing that I tell people. If you find yourself asking one or two more questions than you normally would in that coach lane before you start to tell or advise or fix or cure, that to me is a successful shift. Because like, I agree what you're saying, that accessibility, I call it an accessibility to these skills. They're right there for us. It's just that because we're taught to have answers and that our value proposition is what we know, not what we ask, we're in this catch-22, right? Leaders are hired because of what they know, the experience they bring, and everything that they can give. And so it's this paradox of, and yet the most powerful leaders are the ones that ask the questions, that create pause, that bring the people who are around them, the smart, beautiful, intelligent people around them, to life, right? I love what Steve Jobs says about, why would you hire a bunch of really smart people and then tell them what to do? Like, it's this, ask them what they would do, ask them what their experience is or what their perspective is, and get that brilliance from people. And it's all accessible. It's not, it's not a completely, like you said, it's not a rehaul. It's not a complete reinvention, but it's about being mindful to use those skills, right? Mindful to prioritize those skills. And I think that that's the opportunity in front of us as we bring in coaching to the school cultures. So what do you think is the opportunity for you now going forward to continue this practice, to what do you hope to see in the next 2 to 3 years in terms of a coaching culture in your school, or even just for yourself?
I'll start with myself, and then I'll move to the school. I mean, I'm really determined to follow through with the accreditation process of becoming a fully licensed coach. I'm completely sold on it, and I think for my own professional practice and personal life, for sure, I think it's been a hugely positive addition to my life, for sure. And I really think it plays a huge part in, especially in the role I'm in as a senior leader, leading other senior leaders. I think we have to be coach-like because they're incredibly skilled. They've got enormous amounts of knowledge, and just unlocking that with those coaching skills is a much needed leadership trait, for sure. But that's not just for senior leaders, for middle leaders, for young people as well. So yeah, I want to go through with to get my ICF accreditation with Coach Academy, for sure. I think for a school, we're almost operating in a 3-school system at the minute between primary, secondary, and admin. And secondary, we're making these huge inroads and attaching to coaching to nearly everything that we're doing. And I'm just feeling like we're leaving behind primary and admin. And I really want to work with both of those sections of the schools to ensure that they're seeing the benefits of it, but also that it fits. Because there's, not going into too much detail, there's definitely a complexity in both camps with whether it fits or where it fits. So ensuring that it's done with, I suppose, being coached like myself, right? And ensuring that I'm not treading on any toes, but whatever we're doing with coaching, it's enhancing what they're doing, because there's remarkable work going on in all 3 sections of the school. I just think at the point we're at now, coaching or coaching culture, a coach-like culture, whatever you want to call it, I think is going to really reap the benefits, especially for one's well-being. And I've not quite managed to be successful with it yet, with primary and admin. I think there's pockets of it. But yeah, it's not to the extent as what it is, I think, in secondary at the minute, which is disappointing. It's something for me to look in the mirror at myself and see where did it not hit off, and what could we do differently, and what's most important next.
Yeah, but I think that your act of pursuing that and persistence is what you were saying earlier about failure is the opportunities to learn. If it's not working yet, what can we change? What can we pivot? And that's also what I love about coaching. There's no destination in coaching. It's truly becoming. It's an awareness that continuously develops. It's not this place that I arrive to. It's really the process of, and that inquiry is what creates opportunities. It opens doors, right? It changes the way that we think about things. And so if a leader from a school came to you and said, I want to shift to a coaching culture, how do I start? What do I do? What are the first three things that you would tell them to do?
Well, we did the thorough process. We went through the self-directed learning model, and the first step of that self-directed learning model is a humble inquiry. So we reached out to four different schools that we knew of that were at least engaging in coaching. So whether they were having some of their staff body that were engaging in training, etc. And we kind of got all of the best bits from what is out there, and then we did a bit of a deep dive into what we currently do, and that confidence and competence survey that I talked about before, that was a part of it. But we found out where are the pockets of coaching that we already had. We then compiled the best of what's out there with the best of we got, and we created this learning agenda. And that learning agenda is still going, really, and it's definitely enhanced since we've come across the Coach Academy. And a part of that learning agenda was we need to have staff trained in the practice of coaching. Now we've got, I think, 15 staff members that are all through the Coach Academy program. We've got an in-house coach program which staff can sign up to be coached. There's over 26 in that program.
Wow.
We've got coaches linked to, I think I mentioned it earlier, linked to our projects, our development initiatives, our development planning, our developing professional capacity. So it's kind of, it's in a good spot, to be fair. So I would definitely recommend going through a similar process that we went through, finding out what works elsewhere, what's already going well, and then set yourself a learning agenda. And the use of an implementation cycle has been really powerful. We've used the best practice implementation cycle. And just keep reviewing it, keep taking the temperature, I think has been another powerful one. Is this landing? Is it any good? The anecdotal feedback you get, and when you ask those questions, is that people are really bought into it. Why wouldn't you, right? Like, people are listening to you really intently, and they're asking some powerful questions, and you're growing as a result of it. It's kind of a no-brainer, really. So I think in brief, definitely explore what other people are doing, because it will be different, in all of these different schools, and then figuring out what's working for you and combine the best of what is, and then just go for it. Definitely needs training, 100%, because people say, oh yeah, I'm a coach and they haven't had proper training. I think the training we've had through the Coach Academy has been just remarkable. The first level with Olga, and then the level 2 with yourself, it's added immense amount of expertise to our offerings and provision.
Yeah, and I'm hearing a lot of opportunity for a top-down approach, like bringing this in from a buy-in perspective of leadership, moving and trickling it down. I think that is one thing I've witnessed is a very important part. Also, I love what you said about starting from a strengths-based approach, like what's already working and what do we want to build on. And then what you brought in around, what would you do to redesign like a framework for a school? You talked about being intentional about what culture do you want to have in your school, defining that culture. I think that also is an important piece of what are the expected changes that we want to witness, and what measures of change will we see, and what do we want to see, and what do we want to create? Those questions are so important about the intentionality around, doing this work and all the efforts that you've put in. I mean, this has been a long project and an ongoing project. We're in our 3rd year, believe it or not, with ISP, working with schools all over the world. And it's been such like I said, a privilege. But also I see the work it takes. I see the buy-in required and the energy shift in people. And it's really great to witness the passion that comes through from the educators. And I think a big part of it is also what you mentioned, which is that people want to feel like there's an investment in their development. too, right? That has come through on many levels in this work with ISP, is the gratitude that the people have for the investment in their development. And that is, I think that is a great compliment to ISP and what they've put forward as their priorities, and also to each one of you in the schools who are doing this work and bringing. I mean, I love that you're doing coaching in your school. You're providing the service in your school. That's so fantastic, and I'd love to hear more about that on another on another level. But time, of course, is of the essence. What can you just say a couple of words about that? Like, is it well received, and are people, taking you up on the opportunity?
Yeah, and I suppose I mentioned earlier that we didn't get much movement with a coach-like culture in some of the sections, but we've actually had sign up from both other sections within the in-house program, which has been really great to see, especially within our admin, which is our host nation, our Thai staff. So I'm really, really happy about that. I mean, there's 26 staff members who are signed up for it. And those who are level 1 or level 2 trained, they're the only ones who are our coaches. So I mean, we will definitely try and get some feedback from that, but I suppose it's quite a confidential and sensitive setting, right? Like, we all have the agreement that was provided with Coach Academy. We've tweaked it a little bit, so whatever happens in those coach-like conversations or those coaching conversations are confidential. But nobody's dropped out the program; they're all still in it, I hope. I just think it's great that we're offering it. It's almost like I feel like it's a really supportive mechanism for people. If they're just a bit stuck on something, they can sign up, and one of our coaches who are available, they'll be able to provide some time. But some of them are in ad hoc, and most of them are actually in. I think 20 are in long term, so they'll be until the end of the academic year. And some will have one a week, some will have one every 2 weeks, some will have one a month. Really happy with that part of it.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, I know it's the end of your day. It's the beginning of mine. And I always ask a few questions at the end of the podcast just to hear what you've learned. And so one of them is, if you had a message, and this is such a great question for you right now because you are expecting a child, and that's such a beautiful time in the world, in your life. So what message would you want to send to your younger self if you had an opportunity, based on the lessons that you've learned up to this point in your life? Like, what stands out as lessons that you may pass on to your child?
Oh, God. Slow the hell down, I think, would be the first thing. Listen to understand would definitely be something as a core principle, right? Like, really deeply listen to people. Slow down is I know I kind of made a joke out of it, but 100%. I'd wish I'd slow down a bit. I suppose go easy on yourself would be another message, and I think coaching allows for that as well, doesn't it? You can get quite raw and vulnerable in a coaching conversation. I think there's a lot of time in this world for that right now, is to sit with your thoughts and try and get as comfortable as you can in them to understand yourself better. Mm-hmm. I think there would be my 3.
Okay. And if you had to, define what does it mean to flourish as a human? Like, what would you say is what is fulfillment when you're human?
What was coming up for me before, just in that previous question, and it's come up for me before when I've thought about kind of what do you really want from education. And I think by the time a young person leaves school, if they know themselves to the best of their ability, if they really do know who they are, their emotions, when they get up, when they go down, I think that could be fulfillment, because they're going to have more skills, more coping strategies. They're going to be able to deal with life way better. And to get to that point, it can't just be schooling, right? There needs to be a lot of partnership with home. And I think that's why education is mighty complex, or growing up is mighty complex. I think fulfillment is knowing who you are and doing your very best for other people, and doing the very best you can in all walks of life. I think knowing yourself as a human, doing your very best for other people, and doing the very best for yourself. That answer wouldn't have been 10 years ago for sure. It would have been very different, I'm sure.
Mm. I really appreciate when you said know yourself. You talked about coping skills and knowing your highs and lows and emotional, like landscape. Because most people might think, know yourself, know what you want to do in life, know, the career you want to have. And
Well,
it's so, I just think I really appreciate that attention to know who you are and how you are in the world and what, you know, your own emotional landscape is and how you are in your best states. That I think is really powerful.
yeah,
And
and
the
I think
final question, if you had, oh, sorry, go ahead. There's a delay, so I think I'm talking over
no,
you.
no, no problem. I was just thinking the critics of that response might say, well, you don't know who you are even when you're 30. I think, well, maybe if you tried harder or maybe if everybody tried harder when they were younger, I think maybe would be my response,
Well, yeah, and because I don't think that I was equipped, like if I had these questions and this way of being and thinking as a young person graduating from high school, I might have been better at connecting and communicating at that age and knowing myself, as you say. So that's why, again, I really feel like these are skills to be taught. We can't just make an assumption that people are graduating with the skill to go out in the world and cope and with their emotional highs and lows and connect and communicate and all these things that we kind of put on the sideline and prioritize curriculum, math, English, geography is more important than how do I be human and connect to other humans.
So true. I think that's where I was getting to with the taught and the experience thing before, is if they experience these type of conversations as young as you can, that goes,
Yeah.
you could argue they are being taught with that, but I think the experience of being in those conversations and being really vulnerable and being really close to their emotions, that the whole thing about coaching isn't therapy, but it's therapeutic. Like I find that so true. It really is.
Yeah.
And if our young people in this world can get to grips with who they are a little bit earlier, I'm not saying they need to know the finished article. Far from it. I just think, who's really inside of there, and once they know that, they can cope and deal and strategize a little bit better than maybe what we did when we were trying to navigate things. But anyway,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the final question I have is if you had one chance to ask the universe a question and get the answer, what would you ask?
wow. It's a really, really great question. I was going to make a joke about how to lower my golf handicap.
I was expecting some kind of athletic analogy or joke.
I know. I think
The golfing.
something around being content, fulfillment. Maybe it's the same question as you asked me before. What does it truly mean to feel content, or what does it truly mean
Hmm.
to feel fulfillment? I think is a really, really powerful question. Yeah, and then one's answer is very personalized to them, right? I'm sure you asked how many people on this podcast that their answer would be very different than what mine was, but if they know the answer to that, then there is a greater sense. I think balance was also coming up for me. It's something I've really struggled with. That's a very personal thing, though. What does it truly mean to be balanced? And that's
Mm.
the commitment you put into things, or the mental energy you put into different things. I think that was a content, fulfillment, and balance all kind of rolled in. If there's a word to describe those three beautiful concepts, and it would be that. Sorry, I can't give you a clean question. I'm sorry.
No, I think your questions are great, and I also really appreciate the attention to we want the universe to have all the answers, and yet I think the answer is different for each of us. So I think that's kind of a really neat way to think about it. Well, I'm really grateful for this time with you, Stephen. Thank you so much for, being a guest on the podcast, and also just all the work you're doing, and, and supporting in the schools, and your passion for coaching is really lighting me up. And I'm just so happy that, we had a chance to meet, and I just wish you all the best in, what you're trying to implement there with all of the great people around you supporting that. So thank you. Really appreciate the time with you.
No, thank you, Nathalie. The gratitude is all paid to yourself for giving me an opportunity to talking more about it, and I've really appreciated working with you with Coach Academy and the great work that you're doing, and we're really looking forward to furthering that. Fingers crossed, touch wood. Pray to God it all continues.
Yeah, absolutely. If anybody has questions for you or wants to reach out, is there a place that they can do that?
Yeah, for sure. If they wanted to find out about how to embed coaching, or at least attempt it, then LinkedIn is probably the best the best platform. More than happy to talk through our processes and share everything that we've done.
Yeah, great. Well, we'll put your LinkedIn, the link to your LinkedIn in the show notes in case anybody wants to reach out. So that's it. Well, thank you so much, Stephen.
Thank you, Nathalie.